became a hot button issue this week, Clark. Russell Wilson got benched. It came out that he was benched the other day, and they're going to play Jared Stidham in the Broncos' last 2 games. And and the story with this is that Denver, we've been saying it the whole season, Clark. Russell Wilson is not playing well. If any other quarterback were playing like this, any quarterback that we have, at least some kind of expectations for, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Tua, whatever, any of those quarterbacks were playing like that, they'd be getting ripped apart because of, you can't win with them playing like that. So they benched him, and basically, Clark, this comes down to the contract. Like we knew in the first 4 or 5 games of the season that it would be the best thing for Denver to do would be to move on from Russell Wilson at the end of the season, because, they would take a cap hit for a year or 2, and then they could get out of most of the contract. So that's basically what's happening here. And so there's a couple of points I want to go over. Number one, there seems to be a complete misunderstanding of this, especially in the sports media. Russell Wilson is not playing well. That's not a debate. Okay? That's not up for we can't debate whether he's playing well or not. He's not. Okay? Don't show me statistics. Watch the games. Okay? He has the 30th depth of air yards per attempt in the NFL. Okay? So basically he throws the ball a shorter distance than 2 other guys in the league. That's pretty bad. Okay? Most of his passes, as I've been joking, but it's serious, are 4-yard passes to running backs after Russell Wilson has run around for 3 or 4 seconds. Okay? Then he completes 2 or 3 passes a game down the field to Cortland Sutton, and that's it. And he's throwing for like 200 yards a game or somewhere around there. Okay? This idea that, he's playing well and, they should keep him as a starter is complete bullshit. He can't make the plays that you need to win games consistently. Now, if they play that game they won against Buffalo on Monday night earlier this year, where it's 22-21 and the defense plays really well and somebody misses a field goal and, whatever. Yeah, then maybe they can win games they can eke out games like that if everything goes their way and the defense plays well. But it's not, I don't understand the people who are acting like, oh no, they were winning. I'm like, okay, they were 7-8. And the other thing is Russell Wilson cannot run Sean Payton's offense. We saw that the first 4 or 5 weeks, which is why Sean Payton dumbed down the offense to make it remedial enough for Russell Wilson to be able to run it, at some kind of, level, whether it's an acceptable level or not, we could debate, but, to allow him to just be able to do it. And when you watch the games, there are all kinds of plays where Russell Wilson drops back, stands there, and then takes off out of the pocket. Does not hit receivers when they're open, makes bad decisions. Okay, so we gotta just be honest about all of that. Okay, and Denver, they basically, I guess it came out that earlier this season they asked him to basically move back a date on his contract when the injury guarantee would kick in. Right, so Denver was basically saying, hey, can you just be a little flexible on this? You're still going to get your money. Can you be a little flexible on this so we can figure out what we're going to do? Okay, Russell didn't want to do that. That's his right. It's his contract. He's allowed to do what he wants to do. But that's not insulting. Players get asked to restructure their deals all the time, especially high-priced quarterbacks. It's not unusual. That happens all the time in the NFL. So it's not insulting to ask him to do that. But the biggest thing that I just can't get by is, Russell Wilson's being disrespected. Just a tremendous disrespect. The way he's being treated is just completely disrespectful. Okay, all we've seen is Sean Payton has yelled at him a few times on the sideline. Okay, and what? Why is and he got benched? He got benched because of his play, right? He believes this is how bad it is. Denver believes there's a better chance that they're going to win with Jared Stidham over Russell Wilson. Okay, and they already know they're not going to be able to trade Russell Wilson. The only thing they can do is just cut him. Okay, and when nobody reaches out to trade for him, which is what's going to happen, no one's going to trade for that contract. When no one trades for him, okay, then we'll know for sure. Boy, will you still think Sean Payton's disrespectful to Russell Wilson then? So I don't understand the disrespect thing. I don't get it. It's ridiculous. He got benched. Quarterbacks get benched. When you don't play well enough, you get benched. That's how it works. Okay? The 49ers moved on from Joe Montana. Okay? They were like, you know what? We think you're kind of past your prime. We're going to go with Steve Young. Okay? That's a guy who had 4 Super Bowls. Okay? So I'm sorry. This is a bottom line deal. And he was not playing well. He was not getting it done. I just don't understand. Maybe you can explain it to me, Clark. Why? What is the deal where everyone's like, oh my God, how could they disrespect him this way? This is classless and whatever. I just don't get it. So can you explain it?
Well, yeah. So I did want to comment on, how good is Russell Wilson? And you kind of talked about it a little bit, because stats can be really deceptive. So for instance, one of the things I looked at, Russell Wilson is currently 7th in the league in his passer rating, right? And so that's like, well, that sounds like it must be pretty good, right? I mean, 7th in the league, that's top 10. But also, if you look at it, so passer rating is a flawed stat people have done videos about that and talked about it. ESPN several years ago came out with a stat called QBR, which is sort of similar to passer rating, but it tries to account for basically the context of how the quarterback's playing. So like, if you have, a lot of success in critical moments in the game or late in the game, that matters more than stuff you did in the first quarter. Or if you throw a short pass and the guy runs for 50 yards, that's not as important as you throwing a ball that goes 50 yards and the receiver catches it. So anyway, Russell Wilson's QBR is 50.6, which is 21st in the league, which by my estimation, that's probably about right. Because what we've seen with Russell Wilson is there's a lot of short passes. He's not throwing for a bunch of yards. He will make some throws downfield. And by the way, his deep ball is still pretty good. It's not like it happens all the time, but it feels like, once or twice a game you see a deep ball down the field and it's like, oh, that was nice, and he'll run around a little bit and he'll make some plays here and there, but he's not as spry as he used to be. He's not as quick or twitchy, whatever you want to say. And so, yeah, he's not as good as he used to be. Excuse me. So, it seems like, basically Russell Wilson is an average to below average QB who every now and then makes, he'll make a few plays that are maybe a little above average. I've seen him on the runs throw some touchdown passes, which were pretty nice. But that's picking one thing out of a bunch of other plays that were really not spectacular at all. And I was looking through some of the results of some of his games, like some of the box scores, and I even went back and watched highlights of some of those games. And it's really, it's like, for the people who think that Russell Wilson is really good, like, well, can you explain this to me? So they lose the first week of the season. They lose to Las Vegas 17-16. Okay, he throws he drops back to pass 34 times, only gains 177 yards. Okay, I don't think I'm not sure if he had any touchdowns. Yeah, he didn't have any touchdowns in that game. And remember, they're playing Las Vegas. They could only score 16 points. Literally, you get one more field goal, you win that game. Against the Commanders, they were up by a bunch, and then they let the game they let Washington come back, and Russ was he 18-32, 308 yards. So that's the one of two games this year where he threw for over 300 yards, and they lost the game. And then of course there's the Miami game, which we don't need to get into that. They lost 70-20. Then there was the Bears game, and that's one of the comebacks he had because they were down by a bunch, right? But one of the touchdowns that was scored in that game during the comeback was scored by their defense. Okay? And, another thing to point out is, he's throwing all these short passes, and so his completion percentage is actually pretty good, right? And then they're like, oh, well, he's not throwing interceptions either. Well, that's deceptive too. He's not letting the ball go. I don't know if if he doesn't see it, or he's trying to protect his touchdown interception ratio. I don't know what's going on. But, and then you look back at, some of the other games, like they lost to the Patriots. There's no excuse for losing to the Patriots right now. That's just kind of embarrassing. Houston, that was a game they probably could have won. Houston had massive injuries in that game, and he threw 3 interceptions. Russell Wilson threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, I don't mean to cut you off there, but I just think I think Russell Wilson has achieved some kind of stature where I guess the sports TV shows and the national media, they don't want to criticize him because he had such a great career up to this point. And because I don't understand the wanting to come to Russell Wilson's defense. And it's just like, and then I'm listening to these shows, and I think it was on Speak on FS1. They're saying, well, why? Well, if they're asking him to redo his contract, well, they weren't really trying to win. And
oh yeah, I heard that too.
it's like, actually, no, they were trying their best to win. It's just this is the only way they could do it. And then I heard Dan Orlovsky say, well, he's played like a top 10 to 12 quarterback. It's like, no, he's not. First of all, not only is that not accurate, number one, but we've talked about this before, Clark. There's only 6 great quarterbacks in the NFL. So, I mean, you can pick the ones you want. I'm not going to go through the names, but there's basically 5 or 6 of them that are elite in the NFL. Everybody else, so you can be in the top 10. That doesn't mean you're a great quarterback.
Well,
So,
and in fact, I'll say this. As I was making notes on this yesterday, I actually tried to go, okay, you're saying he's a top 12 quarterback. Okay, fine. So the challenge now is to name 12 quarterbacks who I think are better than him, who a lot of people would agree with. Okay, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. Hell, I'll put Tua above him. If you want to put Mahomes in there, you still can. I mean, Josh Allen you could put in there. Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. I was going to say Baker Mayfield, but I think I've gotten to 12 there. Oh, C.J. Stroud. Hell, you can put C.J. Stroud in there. He was out for a couple weeks there, but he's played really well. And the reason that I'm putting the reason I'm putting all those quarterbacks there is, well, not all of them, but most of them. I mean, even Jalen Hurts today, they put up 31 points. They lost the game. Do you see Russell Wilson doing that? Do you see Russell Wilson winning shootouts? That's not what he was doing this year. Do you see Jalen Hurts is still like, I have criticisms of how he's played this year, but Jalen Hurts can raise his level of play. He can help his team win games that are really ugly. Russell Wilson doesn't really do that. The defense has to play well, and Russell he can't throw interceptions. And then I love on Speak, they were talking about, they came to him about the contract after the Chiefs game. He threw 3 touchdowns in that game. Did you watch that game? 3 touchdowns. Yeah, fine. He threw 3 touchdowns. The defense basically totally, like I was looking at it again. So his stat line for that game, the second time they played the Chiefs, 12 of 19 for 114 yards. Okay, his average, yards per pass? 6 yards. Okay, so you're trying to tell me that means he's an elite quarterback just because he beat the Chiefs? And are we ignoring that the Chiefs are like, I don't want to say a dumpster fire, but the Chiefs are a mess this year?
yeah, I think I don't understand it. I don't understand why everyone's treating Sean Payton like he's a crazy person because he's the first guy ever who's yelled at his quarterback. Like, have you guys watched football at all? Like, how old are you people that you haven't seen any games where people get yelled at? If you don't do your job well enough, they replace you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just ridiculous to me that we're acting like this is just this horrible level of disrespect. It's garbage.
Right.
So,
And let me comment on the first question you would ask me about, what do I think about the way that the media has reacted to this, essentially. So I'm always really suspicious of the idea that we need to be careful how we treat people based on their past achievements. And also, again, people are acting like it's some outlandish thing that the Denver Broncos did. What are they really trying to do? They're trying to protect their interests, which they have a right to do. They asked him to do something. He said no. I also heard this. They said, "Why are you asking him to do that after a win? What do you want him to do? Ask him to do it after a loss?" To me, that seems like a perfect time to ask him to do it because, hey, you just won. You're in good. You guys are starting to turn things around. And by the way, Russ said no. By the way, that's what I would have done if I was in his position. I don't have any problem with him saying that. Like, he got them to sign that. He got them to offer him the contract. He signed it. Like, they signed it. So yeah, you should. Russ should try to protect his interests, and the Broncos should try to protect theirs. I don't see where the animosity or like this is totally uncalled for. How the hell can you do this? And then also people are talking about, well, they threatened to bench him. Is that wrong? Well, no. I mean, the coaches are the ones who make roster decisions. They get to decide who's going to start, or if they're going to pull somebody out based on the way they're playing. And then you mentioned, I thought it was hilarious, you mentioned Joe Montana basically got traded. There are numerous examples of that kind of stuff happening throughout the history of the NFL, not just in the NFL, but also professional sports. I mean, Brett Favre with the Packers, I mean, I know that essentially he retired, but it was basically like they told him they wanted to move forward with Aaron Rodgers and he didn't want to play for another team. So he basically was kind of forced into retiring. And then, of course, he came back and there was that whole mess with that. Jimmy Johnson wanted to get rid of Dan Marino. He criticized Dan Marino when he was a coach of the Dolphins. Dak Prescott just had the whole contract dispute with the Cowboys a few years ago. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Belichick wanted to replace Tom Brady with Jimmy Garoppolo. The team also, they wouldn't give Tom Brady the extension that he wanted, and this is after winning, 5 Super Bowls at that point. There's tons of examples of this stuff, and so I just don't. Peyton Manning got cut. Okay, like what? So it's like, oh, they can't ask Russell Wilson to restructure his contract, and I've seen elite quarterbacks restructure their contracts all the time. I don't know if the quarterback's idea it's the quarterback's idea or it's the team's idea, but that whole thing that this is disrespectful and this is wrong and they're not committed to winning. Are you kidding me? Like Sean Payton's had to basically like rack his brain to figure out, okay, how do I win with Russell Wilson the way that he plays, given the system that I want to run? Okay, and they did figure out how to play well enough. The defense got better over the year. They're not committed to winning. What, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time? You can't be trying to win games right now and also be thinking about the future, especially when it comes to Russell Wilson's gigantic contract. And then just the last thing I'll say is, I was listening to Pro Football Talk, so Mike Florio and Chris Sims, and Chris Sims, had it down. He's basically like, it took Sean Payton a while to figure out how best to play with Russ, and then it got better, but then it plateaued, and then it didn't get any better, and they were really kind of simplifying stuff, and that's why Sean Payton was talking about it with the armband thing, and then look, if you want to say that it was Sean Payton like completely lost control when he was yelling at Russell Wilson during the Lions game, I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you. But I think and Mike Florio had this down. It feels like what happened there was Sean Payton has been, coaching Russell Wilson this whole time and trying to get the most out of him and trying to get him to play within his system. And it just reached a point where it's like, dude, how many times have I told you to, do X, Y, or Z and you're not doing it? Like, what the hell? What else am I supposed to do? And so it just reaches a point where you're like exasperated, like I'm squeezing as much as I possibly can out of this. There's nothing else left. So, yeah, I mean, I heard some on Speak, they were also saying, Russell Wilson's trying to build. I mean, last year they only won a few games. This year they've got 7. Maybe next year you get 10. I'm like, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl before. We're supposed to wait around for him to, make the playoffs? Like, what are we talking about here?
Right. Yeah, they didn't say Denver did not intend. This wasn't intentional by Denver. You know what? We're going to treat this guy like crap because we're bored. No, because they don't know what else to do. So, yeah, the media is wrong on this. You guys, all with the disrespect, I'm usually not that definitive on this, but you guys are just flat out wrong. Like, there's no evidence to suggest what anybody in the media is saying, and why won't anybody just be honest about it? Instead, it's nonsense.
Yeah, and people are, they're saying, well, he was winning games. Okay, I understand. Yes, technically the objective is to win games. Okay, but you also have to ask, is what we're doing sustainable? Okay, Tim Tebow was winning games, but that clearly wasn't sustainable, so that's why they went and got Peyton Manning. Okay, and you're watching the way Russell Wilson's playing, like, yeah, there's a certain way that you have to play. Okay. And if he gets outside of that, if he throws an interception or he throws, a couple interceptions or something like that, or the offense just can't really move the ball at all, their defense doesn't play as well, you're going to lose. And that's basically been proven throughout the season. So, yeah, I don't really get it. And then the other thing is, it's like, well, they're trying to build with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's a middle-aged quarterback. He's in his mid-30s. You think he's going to get better all of a sudden? Like, right. No, he's not.
Yeah, and they signed him. He's on a gigantic contract that he's completely unqualified for at this point. So no, I'm sorry. The team's going to do what they have to do. I hate to, So anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on from that. It's one of those things I just didn't understand.